You're standing at a crossroads, wondering why doors aren't opening, and opportunities seem to be passing you by, and it's hauntingly clear that something is amiss. Are you missing God's timing for your life? This question haunts many who feel stuck, yet they're doing everything right in their own eyes. But here's the shocking truth. God's timing is not about being busy or active, it's about alignment. One of the first signs you're missing God's timing is when you're constantly forcing doors open that refuse to budge, ignoring the principle in Proverbs 3 verses 5 to 6 to trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. You're relying on your strength instead of His guidance, secretly believing that with enough effort, you can make your plans work. Yet, Romans 8:28 reminds us that all things work together for good to those who love God. But this promise hinges on being called according to His purpose and walking in His timing. Think about the story of Abraham and Sarah, who tried to force God's promise into manifestation through Ishmael, only to see God's plan unfold years later with Isaac. This pattern of human urgency versus divine timing is a recurring theme in Scripture. As you reflect on your life, consider whether you're operating in a similar pattern of self-reliance. Another sign you're missing God's timing is when you feel an underlying sense of unrest and frustration despite your best efforts. You may have the appearance of success or progress, but internally, there's a nagging feeling that something isn't quite right. This is often a hidden warning sign that you're operating outside the divine schedule. Consider the life of Moses, who spent years trying to fulfill God's promise in his own strength, only to realize that the fulfillment came when he stepped back and allowed God to work in His timing. The burning bush experience was not just a moment of encounter, but a recalibration of Moses' understanding of God's timing and plan. Similarly, when you're in tune with God's timing, you'll experience a sense of peace that transcends circumstances, a peace that Paul described in Philippians 4:7 as the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding. A third sign you're missing God's timing is when you're ignoring or overlooking the divine appointments and opportunities right in front of you. You're so focused on the big doors you want to walk through that you miss the small, everyday moments that God uses to prepare and position you for what's next. Jesus illustrated this beautifully in the parable of the talents, showing how faithfulness in small things leads to greater responsibilities. When you're in God's timing, you'll find that He uses ordinary moments to prepare you for extraordinary assignments. This requires a shift in perspective, recognizing that God's timing is not just about the big milestones, but about the daily, seemingly insignificant moments that shape us for our destiny. As 1 Corinthians 4:2 puts it, it is required in stewards that one be found faithful, highlighting the importance of faithfulness in the small things. Furthermore, when you're out of God's timing, you'll often find yourself in a cycle of repetition, making the same mistakes, facing similar challenges, and struggling with the same patterns of sin. This cycle is broken not by human resolve, but by a revelation of God's timing and plan. The prophet Isaiah spoke of this in Isaiah 43:19, saying, "Behold, I will do a new thing," but this new thing often requires us to let go of the old patterns and trust in His timing. As you evaluate your life, ask yourself, are you stuck in a cycle of repetition because you're trying to fit God into your timeline, or are you allowing Him to set the pace? This question cuts to the heart of many spiritual struggles, revealing whether our efforts are driven by self-will or divine guidance. If you're feeling stuck or frustrated, take a step back and evaluate whether you're aligned with God's timing. Are you trusting in your plans or His promises? The journey of waiting and trusting is not passive. It's an active process of leaning into His guidance and aligning your steps with His Word. Psalm 37 verses 23 to 24 encourages us that the steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord when we delight ourselves in Him. This promise underscores the importance of seeking God's guidance in every step, rather than relying solely on our understanding. When you finally step into God's perfect timing, You'll experience a supernatural ease and flow that surpasses human understanding, and you'll look back to see how his plan was always better than yours. This realization brings a profound sense of gratitude and humility, acknowledging that God's ways are indeed higher than our ways. In conclusion, recognizing and aligning with God's timing requires patience, faith, and a deep trust in His sovereignty. As you seek to realign your life with God's plan, remember that every moment, whether big or small, is an opportunity to trust in His goodness and timing. Will you surrender your timeline to Him today and trust that His plan is better than yours? The answer to this question will determine the trajectory of your life and the realization of